Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into Real Health. As always, it's really great to be with you. Now, the scientific journal BMC Psychiatry published a study in 2020 showing that iron deficiency anemia is associated with psychosocial consequences and the development of psychiatric conditions. Given that iron deficiency is one of the most common nutritional deficiencies worldwide, affecting more than 2 billion people, it's really important that we're aware of its potential consequences. So we've asked Dr. Paulo into the studio to come and discuss this topic with us. Now, Paulo, I would never have associated iron with psychosocial issues. It's very interesting that this one has come up. So let's just maybe touch on again the importance and the function of iron in the body generally.
All right, here again there's a long list, but iron is famous for hemoglobin, so that's the transport of oxygen. It's used in the production of DNA, production of ATP, the energy within the cell, and it's very important for the metabolism of neurotransmitters.
Okay.
And this is where we're going to probably get to the psychiatric part of it.
Right. So before we get to that part of the discussion, let's just also understand the sort of signs and symptoms of a deficiency of iron in the body. What are they?
All right, so the signs, so remember that you can have iron deficiency without anemia, and then iron deficiency anemia, which is the final stages of iron deficiency. So anemia would be a classic sign of iron deficiency anemia.
Obviously, yes.
Okay, that we get by blood tests, and that is when the hemoglobin levels are low, the number of red blood cells are low as well, and their size is tiny, smaller than what it should be. Then there are many other signs, which are, some of them are non-specific, so they don't necessarily show that you've got an iron deficiency, and the classic ones would be fatigue, all right, brittle nails, hair falling out, difficulty concentrating, pica or pica, depending on how you want to pronounce it, where you feel like eating clay. Okay, that's so that's also one of the signs and symptoms. But you can also have headaches, for example. So there's a whole lot of symptoms that could point to that. So the symptoms should be taken together with the person's lifestyle, and then proper blood tests to determine whether there is a iron deficiency.
So Paulo, I'd like to just understand a bit more clearly that sort of the progression from the start of an initial iron deficiency right through to iron deficiency anemia. What are we seeing there?
So we need to understand that the body has no system to excrete iron, to send iron out of the body. Okay. So iron is typically lost if you bleed, in sweat, in skin cells that slough off, and that's probably so. The body otherwise does not send iron out. So it absorbs only what it needs in terms of what it has from the diet. If it has enough, it will not absorb. Now, iron is stored in something called ferritin, which is one of the blood tests that you can do. So the first stages of iron deficiency is a drop in ferritin, a drop in the storage. So the storage levels are dropping, but there's still enough to make hemoglobin and red blood cells. All right. The second stage is where the proteins that carry that transport the iron in the blood, transferrin, imagine trucks, their levels or their saturation, we measure how many of them are actually carrying iron. So let's say you've got 100
trucks are moving.
You've got 100 trucks, 35 carrying iron, we'll say that's fine. Only 10 are carrying iron, you don't have enough iron. That's why only 10 are carrying iron. So if the percentage of transferrin trucks start reducing, that's an indication that you've got mild deficiency. So these two, ferritin and transferrin, are found in a set of tests known as iron studies. Then the famous full blood count in mild deficiency will show you that the size of red blood cells has now become smaller than what it should be, which is an indication that they are being pushed out of the bone marrow before they are mature. And then the final stage, stage 3, is anemia. That is when there is now not enough iron to produce the hemoglobin necessary for the red blood cells to carry oxygen. So that means that now the number of cells will reduce and their size as well.
So all of those things
that's sort of the progression.
Degraded to the
So in order to decide whether to supplement, for example, the full blood count and iron studies must be done. These figures must all be looked at properly, because what I'm saying is that your hemoglobin can be normal, and yet you are iron deficient. All right. And if nothing is done about it, chances are you're going to become anemic.
So let's move now on to that discussion around sort of neurological and psychological impact of an iron deficiency. What are we going to potentially see in that space if there is an iron deficiency?
Well, it has been shown that in research that iron deficiency anemia is more prevalent in patients that have cognitive impairment and neurological disorders. Okay, so that has been shown. For example, GABA, the neurotransmitter GABA, in iron deficiency, the amount of GABA is reduced, and that leads to impaired memory, for example, impaired learning, impaired concentration. Okay, and iron is required for the production as well of many of these neurotransmitters.
Okay. We've also heard something about the myelination, deficient or impaired myelination.
Yes. So in iron deficiency anemia, it has been shown that the myelination in the brain, the myelination of nerves is impaired. So the covering of the nerves is not performed properly, and if it's not performed properly, the transmission of the signal within the nerves cannot be achieved correctly.
Okay. So now we've got the neurotransmitters, we've got the myelination. What about the psychosocial aspect? I mean, is there indication that iron deficiency is causing an impact on psychosocial behavior?
Yes. So there is. For example, there is research that shows that in iron deficiency anemia, psychosocial behaviors are influenced negatively in the presence of a disturbed dopamine metabolism, for example. Okay. I think one of the things that should be done with patients that present with symptoms of depression or anxiety, you should always do a full blood count and an iron study.
Okay.
Because many of these patients, the challenge is that there's not enough iron to assist in the metabolism of the neurotransmitters.
Right.
Because here again is a classic principle that we've spoken about many times before. You take any substance, iron in this case, and you present it to the body. The body has multiple uses for it. The body will decide where to use it at that specific time or for the next month or two or whatever it is in terms of a set of priorities. It needs to keep you alive. All right? Now, your mood may go down, but you're still alive. So if the body needs to keep you alive, first of all, it will use iron for those functions.
Yes.
And if there isn't enough, then there won't be enough for neurotransmitter metabolism, which means this may be one of the factors contributing to depression and anxiety.
Right.
And therefore, patients presenting with symptoms of depression and anxiety should be investigated for iron deficiency.
Yes.
Not necessarily iron deficiency anemia, but just iron deficiency.
And there again, we end up in a potential where we're treating the symptom with sort of antidepressants or whatever it might be.
When we could give them iron and probably correct many of these patients.
Right.
Well, not really depressed, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely, because we can see there's a different source of the problem. But now the study that I referred to up at the top, I mean, has that, is it indicated that iron supplementation then has a positive benefit?
Yes. So what they did, so as usual in such studies, so they have a group that has been confirmed as having iron deficiency anemia, and they've got a control group that does not have anemia. Okay, and it was found that the iron supplementation mitigated the development of psychiatric disorders, which means anxiety, depression, and bipolar, for example.
Right.
And it also reduced the occurrence of sleeping disorders.
Okay.
Which is also considered together with the psychiatric disorders.
Yes.
Okay. And it is also dependent on the amount of iron. In other words, iron plays a role in terms of the development of sleeping disorders as well.
Okay. And when you go about supplementing with iron, I mean, what are some of the things that we should be considering for a quality iron supplement?
Yes, so we need to make sure that the type of iron that is being given, because remember, iron is easily oxidized. That's what rusting is all about in the environment. And that's exactly what happens to your cells in a sense. And this oxidation process can actually begin in the gut.
Okay.
So it depends on the form of iron that you are supplementing with. So the very cheap forms of iron, they cause oxidation, and also they lead to gastrointestinal symptoms such as constipation and bloat. You know, iron supplementation is famous for giving you stomach problems, as people put it. All right. So we need to find a form of iron that does not cause these symptoms, and a form of iron that is delivered in a way that it can be absorbed as the body requires it, without the possibility or reducing the possibility of it being oxidized within the gut.
Now, Paulo, we've put into the Real Health Medicine cabinet BlueIron, which is something that's distributed by Psychosocial International. Would this check those boxes that you've just mentioned?
Yes, it does. So BlueIron is produced in Finland, in Europe, So it's a liquid form of ferric iron. It is microencapsulated, okay, in a polymer, so that it goes through the stomach and is not affected by the stomach acid. Because remember, stomach acid is essential for the absorption of iron, and that's another issue. So people on proton pump inhibitors are invariably iron deficient.
Okay.
And I'm talking about iron from the diet alone.
Yes.
So it goes through the blue iron, goes through the stomach without being affected. The polymer then releases the iron in the gut, allowing the gut to absorb as required.
Okay.
Over and above that, the product has got what has become world famous Nordic berries, blueberries from Finland, which are apparently handpicked, and it contains vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin B12 as well.
Okay. And in terms of dietary sources of iron that would be sort of useful to be increasing in association with supplementation, what should we be looking at that would be of benefit to us?
All right, so we know the classic assumption that vegans and vegetarians are probably iron deficient, okay? And they are. All right. The reason is this: there is iron in plant matter, but it's non-heme. In other words, heme is a protein, hemoglobin.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not attached to a protein, so it is more difficult for the gut to absorb it.
Okay.
Whereas the iron in animal products such as red meat is heme iron, so it is more easily absorbed.
Right.
So that is one basic foundational reason why vegans and vegetarians that do not consume animal products are invariably deficient in iron.
Okay.
So groups that need to look at iron supplementation would include growing children, for example, teens, women with very heavy periods because of the heavy loss of blood, elderly people as well, people that do a lot of exercise as well, and of course people that have certain conditions or they are taking certain medications that reduce the absorption of iron.
Okay. Should people be taking iron supplements without having had some sort of a blood test and a consultation to ascertain if it's actually necessary?
Look, I think you should always have blood tests. And the reason is primarily to determine whether you have a deficiency, obviously. Not necessarily anemia, but just an iron deficiency, a relative iron deficiency. But secondly, it establishes baseline values, so that if you have a deficiency, so let's say your ferritin is 40 units and your HB is fine, but your stores are running low, you then go onto a supplementation program. Because you've got a baseline value, you can repeat the test, say at 3 months. And now you know where you're coming from.
Yes.
If you have no baseline value, you don't know exactly whether what you're taking is working at all.
Absolutely. Okay. And Paulo, in terms of BlueIron, where can we find the product?
I believe it's available in health shops and pharmacies.
Okay, wonderful. So lovely to chat to you. But interesting discussion. I'm still bowled away by the impact of iron on the mind.
Yes, it's so very important that anyone who's on antidepressants have their iron levels and full blood counts done.
Yeah, another way through. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Paulo.
Pleasure.